Welcome to another edition of Revealing the Diamond. I'm coming to you live from a hotel room in Grande Prairie, Alberta. I've come up here to Seva Yoga, company that is run by the amazing Sarah Connor, to share a weekend one of the Aquarian Luminosity. So this is the kickoff of this leadership training that the weekend one is happening here for this last weekend of September, and then we move to a weekend one in Calgary, which is happening October 18th to the 20th. So if you want to do the Aquarian Luminosity and you're not certain that you can commit to the 10 months in Vancouver, maybe come out to a weekend one in Calgary, because unless you live in Grande Prairie, probably not going to happen tonight. By the time you hear this recording anyways. But Calgary, 18th to 20th at Yoga Passage, get signed up for that. Or if you're like, you know what, I've been listening to these recordings, I really want to go for it, sign up for the full course in Vancouver. It's one weekend per month for 10 months, and it's going to be extra special, so I'm looking forward to that. And then, of course, if you can't make that happen, it's not in the cards this time, no problem. Keep tuning in to the Revealing the Diamond podcast. Take some time to review it for us. That would be so amazing. We really appreciate you guys listening to this content and tuning in on Instagram, where we are every time we record the podcast. And that being said, if you wanted to have this Aquarian Luminosity training in the city or town where you live, we're going to go a little field of dreams on that and say, if you build it, we'll come. You fill up a space and you get the people, we'll make it happen, of course. So this week on Revealing the Diamond, I wanted to talk about creativity and living a spiritual life. And for me, this is such a great topic because I didn't really understand the importance of both the way that I do now. It took me a long time. I always joke and say that I've always had one foot in the ashram and one foot in the nightclub. And I thought that you had to be one or the other, and that was a big challenge for me. And it wasn't a big challenge in the way that you think, where it's just like you're either this or that. I did think that you could do both at the same time, but the way that I approached my life with music and my life with spirituality is I would go to extremes. And the reason I would go to extremes is that I'm a product of the society in which I live. And that is, we live on a duality society, a dualistic society, on a polarity planet. So everything is about good, bad, right, wrong, I'm right, you're wrong, all of those sort of practices. And so there's this obsession or this addiction to experiencing pleasure. And then there's this fear of pain, and we sort of carry ourselves around like that. And hopefully, while we're passing through these extremes of duality, we might find out who we are in relationship to that. And I had some really great people in my life over the years who told me really great advice that, you have to stay involved in music, and you have to also, you're called to be a teacher, so you have to balance the two. And the big challenge for me, there's two things that happened for me where I recognized how I was able to do that. One thing was I had to let go of the drugs and alcohol. I kept going through this song and dance where I said, oh, I could have 2 drinks, and then some days I won't drink, and this whole trip. But it was occupying so much mental real estate that I would lose sight of the creativity and the music that I love, and it became more about a thing of like, how much was I drinking? How much did I drink this time? How much fun did I have? Oh, maybe I shouldn't drink. And then if I really went for it and got drunk, then you go through the hangover and the guilt and the shame, and then you feel like, you don't want to live like that anymore. And somehow I've convinced myself, and maybe this isn't the same for everybody, but I convinced myself in that guilt and the shame that somehow the music that I was involved in was the problem. But it's very clear now, looking back, that it had nothing to do with the music. It had everything to do with an addiction to substance. And so, I don't know about you, but you've probably been through this before. You're in a place of suffering, so you think you want to change it, and you have some knowledge about spiritual practices. So you think to yourself, okay, I'm going to change up my life. I'm going to let go of all the drinking, and I'm going to become very zen and spiritual, and I'm going to really commit. And then you try to live this life that like a monk would live, or some austere person living in an ashram, even though you live in a city, and you try and cut yourself off from everybody that is important to you, and you do it for a few weeks until you feel a pretty good buzz from it at first, the buzz of holiness, and then you don't have any sort of like roots to put your feet down in the earth and in your practice, and you deny all of the things that are fueling the creative side of your life, and so after about 3 weeks of that, you're miserable, and so you're back on the bottle because you missed your creativity, and then you think that the creativity is the alcohol. That was my experience. So the more I get into this, the Kundalini Yoga, the more I start to see, wait a second here, I missed something very key, and that is creativity is the highest form of spiritual practice. That music is incredibly important, and we need to be super, super conscious about the practices that we're doing in our life. Do they connect us to our creativity, or are they taking it away? And that doesn't, for me, if you look at the common or the whole playing field of this particular situation that we're talking about, the alcohol was causing the problem on both sides of the spectrum. The alcohol was causing me to think that living a spiritual life meant that you had to be this very austere person where you denied any sort of sexual urges or the need to be creative, which is such a load of crap. And then the flip side of it is the alcohol was making me think that I was more into the party than I was into the music, and that's one of the reasons why I love a guy like Ian MacKaye from Fugazi and Minor Threat and Discord Records. Man, as a young man, he had the wherewithal and the understanding to see that music and Budweiser or something, there was like this control issue going on where people were going to shows to drink. They weren't going for the music, they were going for the beer. And then when they would go for the beer, they'd pay all the money for the beer, and the beer would decide whether or not the show was good. And it became this whole church of beer thing that was going on. And the music wasn't really being heard. And I think there's something to that. It's a great teaching. And so now that I have the great gift of Kundalini Yoga, and the way that I understand this to be is that the Shabad Guru, we call it the Shabad Guru in this practice, is the great teacher, and the Shabad Guru is sound as teacher. Sound is the best teacher that there is. Music can cut right to the heart of who you are. It's amazing. And if you have music in your life, alongside spiritual practices that keep you connected to who you really are, then the sky's the limit for your creativity. I was listening to this book that was recommended to me. It's called The War of Art. It was recommended to me by my sister. It's a great book. It's a short little read. If you get the chance to read it, please check it out. It's very good. And he was talking about how in the, I think it might be the Kabbalistic tradition, but I could be wrong, about how there's like above every blade of grass, there's an angel cheering the grass to grow. And then the writer of the War of Art goes a little further and says he believes that there's one angel for the entire planet Earth who's like above the planet Earth cheering for all the humans to evolve. And I like that analogy. And I think that I've noticed that when I'm in the state of creating, like making content like this, and writing things, and listening to music that inspires me, and drawing, and just like making an effort to constantly go through this process of creativity in my life. It doesn't mean that you have to be like recording an album or something. That may be something that you do, but just like making this commitment to show up and create, it's the most fulfilling, the brightest way to live your life. It's unbelievable. And then as soon as you start just going through the motions and that becomes the primary part of your life, it's like, I've just got to try and get through today. That's okay for a while, but if you do it for long enough, you start to dim your light. And you've got these angels cheering for you to evolve and step into the creative self. And it's become very clear to me that all of this yoga practice is about exactly what the word means. It means oneness with God, or let's call it oneness with the Creator. And how do you become one with the Creator? Well, if I wanted to become one with, let's say I wanted to become one with David Bowie, what would I do? Well, I would start to dress like David Bowie and listen to David Bowie and watch films about David Bowie, and then the more I spent time with David Bowie, I would be inspired to create something of my own. And I think that's sort of what our relationship to God is. It's not something outside of you. It's you. You want to be one with the Creator? Then be creative. Fully step into the role of the Creator. Don't feel like, oh, this isn't going to be good enough, or someday when I have the time I'll be creative, or, this isn't worth putting out because nobody's going to listen to it. I mean, I'm working on making this content, and if one person it affects their life, it's worth my time to sit in this tiny hotel room and talk to you guys rather than watch CNN. And I was joking to the people watching on Instagram here that instead of watching CNN, I'll create my own CNN, and we'll call it the Consciousness News Network, where you can tune in and hear about this, and then I hope you guys do the same, because that's how creativity works. There's no competition in it either. There's no need to be better than so and so. If you look at times of great music, like let's take since we're talking Ian MacKaye and what was going on in Washington D.C. in the 1980s, this whole movement starts to come up because a group of kids decide that they want to be really creative and they want to make the music scene all about the music. And then what happens? A bunch of great bands all start to inspire each other and make music. And that's what we need during this time. And then if we can bring the spiritual components into the creativity, where we're all inspiring each other to be creative and to make art and to make the world beautiful and express yourself as you. And then the spiritual side of it is that we have these techniques to clear away the debris, the resistance that's inside of your head that says you won't be able to do this, or it's not going to be good enough, or you won't be able to be as good as so-and-so, or you won't, whatever the bullshit inside your head is. You have some techniques like kundalini yoga to clear away that nonsense, and then just imagine what the possibilities are. I mean, you can create all kinds of things, but it isn't about the end result. And this is where Yogi Bhajan had it. He understood it to a T. It's about the commitment. It's about making space every day. It's creativity as sadhana, not just it's the Aquarian sadhana. I have to get up at 4 a.m. and do the chants. It's, okay, I don't have time to do my painting, so this morning when I do my Aquarian sadhana, I really feel the benefit of doing that, so I'm going to chant the mantras while I paint. Or I'm going to block off half an hour of my day every day to work on that course that I keep saying that I'm going to share, because I haven't started the course because I don't know where it's going to be, and I don't know how much it should be, and I don't know if anybody's going to come, and I don't know if I'm qualified. Knock that off. Set the time, 30 minutes every day. If you write one sentence that's contributing to that, or you just sit down and you free write and you just start letting it come out, that commitment is going to create the momentum to make your masterpiece. And that's where creativity and spirituality come together. It's sadhana. And what is sadhana for? It's to connect you to the best version of yourself. And what is art for? It's an expression of the best version of yourself. And what is music for? It's an attempt to express the infinite, the best version of yourself. All of this that I'm talking about is the G word, God, or the Creator. They go together. And then you have to pay very, very close attention while you pass through this creative process. What are the things in your practice that are taking you away from the best version of you? And you have to find a way to clear them, and that's where the kriyas and the meditations come in, and that's where watching who the people are in your life come in, and that's where the keeping consistent with your commitment to show up and do your work and do your practice. And you do all of those things, and you keep consistent. That's the keep up and you'll be kept up. And then all of a sudden, things start to come to life. Things that you're not going to be able to see when you're sitting there dealing with all the reasons why you can't do something. That's why Yogi Ji said, start and the pressure will be off you. Start and the pressure will be off you. And that's what it means to live a spiritual life. That's what it means to live a creative life. And they're not separate from each other. It is my wish for every single one of you who takes the time to listen to these podcasts and come to class at Dharma Temple and connect with me on Instagram and write me, and all of the people who come when I teach in festivals. And what I want for you is for you to be a fully creative, best version of you, and for you to really love yourself for who you are. That's what I want. That's what I want for everybody. That's what the world needs you to do. And in order to do that, you're going to have to deal with your resistance. The part of you that says you won't be able to. The part of you that says when you have time, you'll take on creative projects. The part of you that says, I'm too busy. Stop saying that. I was listening to Tony Robbins talk on the Oprah podcast. If you didn't know, there's Oprah podcasts, and some of the guests on there are super great. So there you go. Big up, Oprah. Put me on the show. I'm ready. Whenever you want me, give me a call. Have your people call my people. But I was listening to Tony Robbins on there, and he was saying, if you don't have 10 minutes to meditate, you don't have a life. And I agree with that, man. And I want to take that even farther and say, what does meditation look like? It looks like these two things. It looks like dealing with the mental bullshit so you can see who you are in relationship to your conditions. And then it has to do with making a commitment to do a creative endeavor. If you only have 10 minutes, 10 minutes a day, commit to it. What is it that you've always said you're going to create? Play the guitar for 10 minutes a day. Write something 10 minutes a day. Make crafts with your kids 10 minutes a day. Make jam 10 minutes a day. Learn to can things 10 minutes a day. Learn to make Thai food. It doesn't matter what it is. Create. Get out there. Do it. Make it happen. And you'll notice that your radiant body, your understanding of who you are, is just going to expand. And there isn't any rules about belief systems or anything like that. It's like in my life and my sobriety, the deeper that I got into kundalini yoga, the more I remembered what inspired me to get involved in anything spiritual, and that is punk rock music. But I never made any sort of like correlation between the two. I thought like, oh, when I was a kid, I used to like to drink 40 ounces of beer and go to the punk rock show because it was fun to get rowdy. But now looking back, I can see that there was a lot going on there. Like I was really inspired by the kids who were more involved in social action and change, and the vegans and the straight edge kids. And I thought that was so cool, but I was like, I'm not ready for that. I was not ready for it. I admired it, but I wasn't ready for it. And then I had to pass through all of these things along the way. And then as I began to evolve in my consciousness, I was drawn to these very spiritual people who took drugs like Ram Dass and Timothy Leary and Bhagavan Das. And then I sort of started thinking about maybe there's some way to take LSD and experience consciousness. So I started to experiment with that. And then, the deeper I got into things, the more I was sort of like, oh, I can be a meditator and a drinker and a drug taker. And it all seemed to be okay, except for the extremes at which the pendulum were swinging was creating all this pain and suffering. And there were times while I was experiencing that where I thought that I was bad or I was wrong. And now I look at it and I see that even what felt like missteps, like a lot of pain, that pain is the resistance, the teacher that was showing me how to live this in balance. Because the whole way along, if I look back in hindsight, I could see this common thread that in the things I was really interested in my life, deep within it was consciousness. And deep within it were two things: the need to be creative. I've been obsessed with music my whole life. And the fact that I even thought for a moment that I could just like hang up the headphones and don't buy any more records or go to any more shows, just meditate and eat your vegan food and be quiet and then you'll be happy. Well, parts of those things reveal who you are, but denying what brings true joy to your life is not going to work. We've tried that with religion over and over again. It's like, okay, well, you need to really deal with the busyness of your mind. So let's say you can't have any sex and you have to go and live in this hermitage and be by yourself and think about nothing. It doesn't work, you know. But at the same time, we look at guys like Kerouac, who inspired the heck out of me, uh, who died from alcoholism. And does that mean that there isn't any value to what he taught? There's great value to what he taught. There's guys like me who get to sit here and go, did you know that you can take part in all of this music and go to the shows and make art and be a good parent and show up and be a good business person with mental clarity, and that there are techniques to clear away the bullshit that tells you that you're not capable of doing that, or take you to a place where the swinging is not from one extreme of like, I'm addicted to pleasure and I'm afraid of pain, and bring you to a state where you're really grateful for the blessings in your life, and you're also really grateful for the pain in your life because the pain is teaching you. And then the smarter you get, the less you need to get the lessons where you're getting smoked in the head by a 2x4. Just get a nice little nudge along the way. And I really do believe that this whole process of why Kundalini Yoga is effective is that it starts to bring the reminders from these giant, colossal fuck ups that are there. They seem like monsters, but underneath, they're there to try and nurture you and move you closer, like the angels cheering on the grass. But you just won't grow. You keep saying you're not going to evolve, and you keep trying to do it your own way, and you keep trying to deny the things you love, and you keep trying to fit into the mold of what is spiritual, and it doesn't work. But over time, you get the lesson, and you get the lesson, and then you get the lesson. And then when you're in a place like I am now through the practice, I can see that what seemed to be these awful goons that were there to, slap the shit out of me, were actually these kind and compassionate giants who were just doing their job to say, look, buddy, if you're not going to do it, we're going to do it for you. And I get it. I've got the lesson. And now I can be friends with those guys, and now there's like a phone call once in a while for like a test that says, maybe you should have a couple drinks, or, maybe you should respond in a really hurtful way to your partner because she wants you to clean up and you've had a long day and you're tired, or whatever it is. That really all of these angels of consciousness and creativity that are all around me are just giving me opportunities to show up as the best version of myself. And I've got all this technology to move through that stuff. And am I going to stop slipping up? Probably not. I'm probably going to keep slipping up. I'm probably going to, say something I didn't mean, or think something I didn't mean, or whatever it might be. But now I realize those are just my angels showing up and testing me to see, are you ready for this? We know who you are. Do you know who you are? And I just want to say right now, I'm so grateful to be able to celebrate the moments when I really do know who I am. And who I am is this person who loves music, who loves people, who loves teaching, who loves helping people who are dealing with addiction in their lives and who are dealing with the voices in their head that are telling them that they're not good enough. And those voices are just there to correct you with these big, compassionate hearts saying, you know who you are. I had the great gift of having a mother when I was a kid growing up who, whenever I would take a pretty hefty fall, she wasn't afraid to flex a little and show her teeth. And I'm so grateful for that, because if I didn't have that, man, some of those monsters would have multiplied. There's no doubt about that. And as a parent, you can really see that love, it's not a business transaction, as Yogi Bhajan would have said. It's not that. It's loving to the point where you will do the most skillful thing to see that person connect to the best version of themselves. And some of those things are painful, and some of those things are delightful. And isn't that what we do with the Kriyas? Some of the things are awful and you don't want to do them, and you avoid them, and you make this whole trip about it. And some of the things you love, like the chanting and even the things you love, sometimes you find it difficult to show up and do. But ultimately, if we keep up and we observe that process, and then we allow that to become part of our creative process, like sometimes we think we're too busy. Sometimes we say that, we don't have the means. Sometimes we feel like being creative needs to be a performance, and we need to get the grade, and we need to get the validation by somebody outside of ourselves. And just like the Kriyas, the reminder is to keep the neutral mind in relationship to that, to keep up and you'll be kept up, to know that you're here to make all kinds of things. Think of any artist that you love, like great musician. Like I love Neil Young. There are Neil Young records that I don't like that much, but I can tell if I look at them from the neutral mind, I can see that he was just trying something new. He was just trying some new way to express himself. And if he didn't do that, he wouldn't have the staying power that he does now. Because it's not about making perfect records. That's the addiction to pleasure and the fear of pain. We're moving away from that. It's the acknowledging the pleasure. It's the acknowledging the pain. It's making yourself open. It's knowing that you can hold your center regardless of the circumstances. Because the circumstances are going to try and knock you off. There's going to be people, in your life who are really deep in the struggle with resistance and feel like they can't do anything. And they're going to come and try and take you down with them because they're struggling and suffering and say, oh yeah, you couldn't do that. There's no way. And it'll happen in your spiritual practice. Oh, you're teaching without a turban on? Oh, well, you're not allowed to do that. Or oh, you're not allowed to dance in the gurdwara or put the chants to music. Or there's always going to be somebody who's going through their own process, and they're going to come and test you because they have all those same angels that are around them going, let's see, yeah, you think you want to be creative? Prove it. And that's how nature works, doesn't it? Women have been dealing with the resistance of giving birth for thousands of years. And every single one of them that pushes through, that gets through on the other side, receives the greatest gift that there is. And there's always the moment, I don't remember because I haven't given birth in this body in this life, but I feel like I can remember one of the thousands of times that I did it previously. There's always that moment where it's like, I don't think I can do this. And the greatest things in your life come when you hear that and you do it anyways. You move through it. You know exactly who you are in relationship to your conditions. And the two practices that are going to allow you to show up and do that in the face of adversity is be creative and do a practice that keeps you connected to you experientially. You know, Kundalini Yoga, you heard it right here, works every time. Well, I think we got to the point of this short little time together. If you have any questions about creativity, about spirituality, about the Aquarian Luminosity course that's coming up, please don't hesitate to reach out. My email is Tiaga, Tiaga, Prem, Prem, at thedharmatemple.com, and I'll get back to you right away. I also do a lot of one-on-one work with people. I love working one-on-one people, so if you're interested in getting involved with that, if you want to bring Aquarian Luminosity Weekend 1 to the town or city where you live, hit us up. We'll be happy to come and hang with you guys. I really am fired up about getting out there and inspiring communities and people to get this message out that these are the Aquarian times, that you are here to be creative, that you are here to be the best version of you, and I know a few tricks that have worked for me to deal with the bullshit and still show up as the best version of myself. So Satnam, I love you all so much. I love you everybody on Instagram, and I love you everybody for downloading these podcasts on iTunes. Please make sure you give a review, share with your friends, and we'll chat to you soon. Satnam.